Hello and welcome to At the Root of Knowledge, a podcast by Rybarczyk and Daniel Schoech.
Thank you for joining us on At the Root of Knowledge, where we talk about timeless principles and attempt to apply them to modern problems. We are primarily concerned about learning and spreading the truth. We discuss topics such as human nature, motivation, morality, and divine law. I'm Daniel Schoech, and with me is my co-host, Rybarczyk. Please keep in mind, we are morons, and just like many of you, we are here to learn. Tonight we're going to talk about self-improvement, what it means, why we should care about it, the process of improving oneself, and what one can expect to gain from embarking on this journey.
Good evening, Daniel. How are you?
Much better than I deserve. How you feel?
I'm doing very well. Very excited to be here and very happy to be getting started.
Yeah, I would say the same thing. This is new, and it's going to be an adventure, I think.
I agree. It'll be quite the learning experience, and I hope that I'll be able to improve myself in many ways and grow into a much greater person than I am.
That sounds like a valiant and noble cause.
Well, thank you.
I'd definitely say I'm on the boat with you.
All right. So, this evening, talking about self-improvement, I figured one of the first things we should do is define what is self-improvement.
Okay.
Now, the dictionary defines self-improvement as improvement of one's conditions, mind, abilities, through one's own efforts.
Okay.
So, one thing is, I don't like how it uses the word improvement for the definition of self-improvement.
Right.
So, I also took down the definition of improvement. And the definition of improvement is an increase or advance in worth, learning, wisdom, skill, or other excellence. Synonyms for that would be advancement, progress, betterment, or amendment.
Okay. Yeah. That sounds good. I feel like it leaves a lot out.
Oh, it definitely does, but there's also a lot packed into that as well. I mean, the fact that it says other excellence, there's quite a lot that you can pack into the word excellence.
Yeah, you can take that in a lot of different directions.
Right.
Other excellence.
But in the category of self-improvement, I would say it's what excellence do you want to see in yourself?
Right. I mean, when I think of self-improvement, I'm generally thinking about, raising the bar, setting a higher aim, expecting more out of yourself in some regard.
I think that's a very good definition. When I think about self-improvement, I think some way that you're changing how you are acting today in hopes that in the future you'll be able to act in a way that betters your state of life.
Starting with the end in mind.
Yes, as Stephen Covey says, begin with the end in mind.
Right. Yeah.
So, Daniel, why has self-improvement been a important facet of your life?
Well, I've got a lot of aspects that I need to concern myself with performance, and really improvement's the only way to get where I want to be. I know that's kind of vague, but I have many roles. I'm a brother, I'm a son, I'm a friend, choir member, professional, entrepreneur. So I have a lot of areas where I really need to look at how I'm performing and how I'm progressing, because I want to be a better friend, a better family member, a better professional. I work as a service engineer, and I repair CNC machines, and that's really required me to grow a lot, because I'm dealing with customers, and I've really had to reshape how I look at other people and kind of tailor my attitude, my behavior, my conversation to being better at that. I kind of have to look forward and see who I want to be and apply that today to how I perform at work. And also, academically, that's another thing I didn't mention. I love learning. I do like learning academically, but I also like doing a lot of independent study, as you do. So that's another area, because learning it doesn't come naturally. It takes a lot of work, and I think focus, dedication. But yeah, if I would say the three aspects, I would split self-improvement up into my own life, and this actually came from one of Stephen Covey's books, which I think he said he pulled from somewhere else, is a mental, spiritual, social, and physical. I'm trying to set spiritual improvement up as like the highest token, because I believe that's what sets everything else in line. There's a lot wrapped into your spiritual health, your integrity, your character. That's all. I believe that all falls in line with where you are spiritually.
I agree. At my local gym that I go to, there's this painting on the wall, and it has the cross and a triangle in front of the cross. And at the two bases of the triangle, it says mind and body. And then at the top of the triangle, it says spirit. And I think what you just said confirms my thinking about it, is that the mind and the body are linked together, but they support the spirit, but the spirit is the ultimate guide for how the mind and the body will display itself.
they're kind of servants of the spirit, and I think they, like you said, they're foundational. I think they play into each other. It's not like any of them are secluded from the other, because definitely poor physical health can have a massive effect on mental health.
Right, and there's studies also that prove that just exercising daily can astronomically improve your mental state of mind.
Right. Yeah, because, I think your mind works. You can't really explain how the mind works. We've been studying it for ever since the history of human existence. We've been studying the mind, but we know that chemicals affect how we think and how we feel, and that kind of all pulls together, if you will. There's definitely a reason some people I think are overly obsessed with physical health and set that as the highest the highest pillar. But it's definitely something that shouldn't be overlooked. Did I mention social? The social
I believe
aspect?
you did.
Okay. I think that's important too, but then again, I think if you don't have a spiritual sense about you, a sense of morality, ethics, what you're subject to, the principles you stand behind, and why, your social interactions aren't going to be anything more than a self-serving activity.
I agree. In fact, I would say about a year to a year and a half ago, I was experiencing that exact situation where sort of my story, that towards the middle to the end of my senior year of high school, I noticed that I had become a completely self-centered person. Very arrogant, very short-tempered, and just very selfish in general.
I remember.
Yes.
Not
And
to
it-
me,
it
though.
did-
You were always nice to me.
Well, it wasn't that I wasn't nice. It was just everything I did had an underlying reason why I was doing it, and every underlying reason was for personal gain. It did take a dramatic toll on my social interaction. I lost several good friends, wound up betraying the trust of a good friend, and even taken advantage of by a very, very close person. And it took all of that for me to really realize it wasn't necessarily everyone around me that had something wrong. It was actually me that needed to improve. But when I came to that realization, that was when I started on my journey of self-improvement. And after I sort of knew what was wrong, the first thing I set down was, well, what do I want to accomplish? And when I asked myself that question, I thought about it for probably a week, maybe 2 weeks, trying to, at first it was just, well, I want to be better. And so I started looking into how to become better, what qualifies you as a better person, or how can you become a better person. And I believe it was around that time you sent me a video of an interview with Jordan Peterson.
Dennis Prager.
Yes, talking with Dennis Prager. And Dennis Prager in that interview calls Jordan Peterson a good person. And it was right then that I decided that's what I wanted to become. I wanted to be a fundamentally good person. Whatever it took, I wanted to stop living for just me and to contribute as much as I could to everything else, because I had felt like I had just been taking advantage of so much that I didn't deserve. And the only reason I was getting it was because I was trying so hard to stay focused on just that. But because I was so focused on that, everything else suffered. My social life suffered. My mental state suffered. My physical state suffered too. And that interview really resonated with me. And so over the next few months, I really have strived to grow and improve myself financially, physically, mentally, spiritually, and emotionally, and to become, as Stephen Covey puts it, not independent, not dependent, but interdependent of others, so that I rely on them somewhat, but also I can rely on myself and have a well-balanced life between the two.
I'll definitely say, if other people's words are anything to go by, you've done a very good job. A lot of people have noticed improvement. I've noticed improvement, and I think you've come a long way. There with you, struggling in the process. I, took some bad turns myself and was definitely going down a very bad road. And especially when I first started off in college, I threw so much out the door, and all my principles went bye-bye. I won't get into it, but it was a mess, and it's easy to do, very easy. But you know what? Spending the time to improve yourself is worth it. If not for the valuable things that will come of it, then definitely for simply avoiding the consequence. Because in the long run, I believe it's going to cost you more by not actually framing your life out. It will cost you more in the long run.
I agree.
Especially, I'm still pretty young myself, but I don't want to be 40 or 50 years old and be like, well, what did I do?
I agree. I don't want to be 40 or 50 years old and still living the same way I was last year, because I guarantee you I'll either be alone and have no friends, or I'll be able to keep friends for about 2 to 3 months. And that was actually one pattern that I realized was I would meet someone and I would keep them as a friend for a month, maybe 2 months, and all of a sudden they would just completely stop associating with me. And I kept asking, why does this keep happening? What's going on that's making people just shun me after a certain amount of time? And I came to that realization that it wasn't that they were defective. It was the way that I was acting was defective. I'm certainly not a completely good person. I still make more mistakes than I'd like to admit, and I still have so much room for growth. But I have started my journey, and I'm committed to continuing my journey to its end, which is still a long ways ahead, but I'm excited to be here.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the excitement and the fun is in the journey.
It definitely
You
is.
know, getting there's what makes it worth it. Well, I can't say that, but definitely will keep you motivated if you're really committed to it.
Right.
So, yeah. And I kind of wanted to talk before we move on into the process of self-improvement.
Okay.
Is kind of embedded in human nature, if you will, to try and strive for greatness, try and achieve great things. You look at the Roman Empire, you look at the Holy Roman Catholic Church, you look at the United States, especially back when it was founded, and I'm not saying it's not. There aren't people out there nowadays with that same mindset, but humans are kind of always looking to make themselves better. And you can see that a lot through literature. I mean, going all the way back to Socrates. What was the book? Or was that Plato? Plato wrote I can't remember the name of the book, but it's nothing new. And it's definitely something that's deeper in human nature. I believe God put it there. To strive for greatness, to try and perfect your character. And it's something that's unique to humans. Animals can't do it. Animals can't go, well, was that really the most charitable thing I could have done? Are they really going to look at it and go, am I really being selfless? Like, what animal out there is going to be concerned with humility? None of them. That's not a thing.
No.
Stephen Covey talked about it in his book. A thing that's unique to humans is not only can we process information, but we can abstractly think about the process. We can step back and look at the things we are thinking about, which I think is phenomenal.
Yeah. That's a really great statement that Stephen R. Covey made, that we're really the only ones who can do that.
Yeah.
And I believe too that it is embedded in human nature that we not only do we strive for greatness, but we analyze how to strive for greatness.
Right.
We'll look at someone who's ended up in a bad situation, and we'll analyze how they got there and choose not to go down that road because we know it leads to a bad place.
Yeah. Dale Carnegie actually mentioned in one of his books a deep interest humans have in trying to feel important. Giving meaning to their life, adding value outside of themselves. It's something that humans crave. We want to be important. We want to matter. We don't want to be mindless, soulless, wandering piles of dirt. Because people aren't happy like that, I don't think.
No. If we're just wandering around from place to place looking for what's fun to do, we get bored. Eventually. And I don't mean that in the sense that when you're having fun and you're trying new things all the time, that you're going to get bored quickly. I mean that in the way that if you're doing something that you find fun over and over again, it's going to become a mundane process eventually. You're not going to enjoy it, and it'll become like a chore to do it.
Right. Yeah. That, I don't know if it's my theory. It's probably not my theory. I've probably stolen it from someone, as I've done with most of my things. But, everybody seems to be obsessed. Like our entire culture is saturated with feeling. They want satisfaction and pleasure, and they want it now. And I think that's natural for humans, just because of our chemistry, to want dopamine, really to want chemicals released in our brain on a physiological level. But we want pleasure from feeling. But the thing is I don't think we're designed to be driven by that, because if that's what drives us, how far is that really going to take us?
Well, you mentioned that we want it now. Simon Sinek, in one of his lectures, he mentions how, especially this two latest generations, millennials and Gen Z, I believe, they're both obsessed with instant gratification. And he attributes that to how we've been raised in the culture of we were constantly given what we wanted. Even he uses the example that we were given participation medals. It didn't matter whether we came in first or last, that we were all given the same prize. And he says that not only does it devalue the person who has gotten first place, it also humiliates everyone else because they know they don't deserve it. Right. And in that, it's trained us to think that we should get something and we should get it now. And he says also that because of the recent advances in technology, and I'm not saying that technology is bad, and I don't think he's saying that either, but he does say that because of the recent advances in technology, that we're so obsessed with being instantly gratified with something. I mean, if we order something off of Amazon and it isn't here the next day or the day after, we want it for free because we just aren't going to deal with that.
Yeah, we're spoiled.
Yes, we are, in a way. And, and if you want to catch up with one of your friends, you don't have to drive 20 minutes and meet and spend time with them. You can shoot them a text, and if they don't respond within 5 minutes, well, they don't care about you then. And
I definitely don't care about a lot of people because I am horrible with that.
Well, that's
the
culture that we're in right now. That it's if we can't get that instant gratification, that we're just completely upset about it, and it just ruins our happy state of mind that we're in, or our fake happy state of mind that we're in. Right. And he also attributes that state of mind to how we've trained ourselves to have that instant gratification, and why, because we have that instant gratification system in place, we're obsessed with that hit of dopamine that we get every time we get that text back within 2 minutes.
You're placing your sense of accomplishment and your self-worth on how you feel which is very bad and dangerous, because I don't know if you know this about humans. Generally, feelings come and go. They don't last. And I'm not going to say you don't have any control over them, but they're just going to come and go. So you just got to... I think my perspective is, you need to be guided by rationale. And that rationale extends to logic, but it also extends to what you love, who you are, what you stand for, the things you'd be willing to give your life for. But the feeling part of it really should come in as a driving force to push you through. Because sometimes you need, we're designed to feel. And anger, rage, frustration, joy, happiness, all that stuff, they're there for a reason. But I think it's more or less they're supposed to be there as a tool, not as a...
life force.
Yeah, as a life force.
I liked what you said about what you stand for and your rationale and how that has to guide you. Right. And because what you stand for are your values and your principles, and those values and principles have to be what guides you. If you want to have your head screwed on straight, you have to be guided by some form of natural law that's set in place and has been proven to really work. Because otherwise, if you're just living based on feeling, then you're not going to go anywhere fast, except down, at least in my opinion.
Or you're going to be all over the place because there's no direction that's directed by rationale.
Right.
I think a lot of people don't have the humility to admit that they're governed by those principles, by those timeless truths that history has taught us to be true. They want to set themselves up as the greatest thing out there,
Right, but they want to do it based on something that they think they've created, right, that just nobody else figured out over time, and they've just got it right.
Yeah.
Which, odds are, being that we live in the 21st century now, that we're not figuring out much that's very new as far as guiding principles and processes of living.
Human nature.
Right. There's new discoveries every day on it, but I don't think that living out what feels good is a new discovery by any means.
Right. I think there's more lines drawn in the background, and there's more explanation given, but I don't think the big things have really changed all that much. I would argue they haven't changed at all. It's just maybe the definition's been refined a bit. Okay, so now that we've kind of talked about why it's important and kind of laid the foundation, I think we should talk a little bit about the actual process of self-improvement, what it looks like, what needs to happen for this self-improvement to occur.
I agree.
All right. I think it kind of starts off with some sort of realization. I don't know if you'd agree with that.
I would. I think that you have to accept that you have something wrong. And if you don't realize that something's wrong with you, then you won't try to fix it.
Right.
So you have to know that something has to be changed and also have a good reason or motivation for that change and be willing to change it, even if it is painful, or even if your current social group will shun you for making that change.
I think that's good. I think, that realization can be subtle and actually easily missed, because I think it's easy to lie to yourself and hide from these problems. I know for myself, one of the big realizations I made is how bothered I was by people saying certain things. How often I would hear stuff and be uncomfortable hearing it. It's like, why am I uncomfortable hearing that?
Especially when it's criticism.
Exactly.
Yeah.
When it's criticism, and it's like, why am I getting so defensive? What's with the defensiveness? Is this really
necessary?
Yeah, and looking back at it, it's even more obvious now. But why am I defending myself? Being defensive, it's kind of like a last resort thing, and especially when you know the person talking to you loves you, why would you get defensive? Because if you really love them and you believe that and you trust them and believe that they're in it for your best interest, which I believe many people are that I have close relationships with, why would they criticize me if they weren't trying to help me, And I think since I kind of started to see that, I've seen it even more and more, and I haven't really gotten defensive over the past 6 or 7 months, and I hope to continue doing that, because anyway, yeah, it's just very it can be very subtle, and I think that's a big thing is and I've noticed that when you're in that state, it's like a denial, like you're lying to yourself and you don't want to hear certain things, so you justify. I know I've done this myself many times. You justify what you're doing. It's like, and then you come back and you think, why am I thinking of all these excuses why it's okay? If it's okay, why does it matter? If it's a good thing, why am I always telling myself it's a good thing? Like, where's this coming from?
One thing that I've realized is, and I'm sure you've realized this even more than I have, is when you feel that defensive state start to coming on, it's like your pride is just taking this big wallop on the head. Somebody's just taken a baseball bat and just started whacking away at it. And for me, at least, it triggers defense and it triggers anger. You almost want to lash out at the person and just take every single one of their flaws and lay them out before them and say, well, here's how you're wrong too, so now we're in the same boat. Because in some ways it feels like they're putting themselves on a pedestal and just knocking you down. But I do agree that it seems like they're coming from a place where they want to help you, but they can't just help you by letting you go your own way. They have to help you by telling you what you're doing wrong, because otherwise you may wind up messing something up, and that something could be your life.
Right, and I think a good friend, which I've failed to do in the past many times, but a good friend is willing to see a problem and see that something's hurting someone, and kick them in the butt, like, hey, look, this is not good. This is where it's gonna put you. You're going on a bad road. But I think the good friend also has to realize that you're not. They have to see it for themselves, and you can point it out, but that's not necessarily gonna do anything. They have to see it. They have to accept it as their own. They have to accept it as their own problem.
Right.
Not just an attack.
Right. And when they see that problem, that's when they'll have that realization, and that realization will turn into a thought process of how to devise a solution to that problem. I think it starts to activate the the natural receptors in our brain for problem solving.
Yes, when you're like, there's a problem here and it needs to get fixed, and you recognize that it's a problem, you're going to stop looking at it the same way if you didn't see it as a problem before. We've talked about realization. Let's kind of talk about destination, where we're going with this self-improvement thing.
Okay. So, your destination is kind of your, I'd say your end game almost, in that that's where you want all of this to lead to. In my case, it was that my destination was to be a good person. And through that, I've been able to devise certain ways that I have to strive towards that. And I mean, without that destination, I wouldn't have any aim of where I'm going. I'd just be aimlessly wondering about, maybe every now and then finding, oh, I'm doing this wrong and I can improve on it. But I think actually setting a destination gives you a place to look forward to, and now you start to wander more along the lines of, that's where I want to be, here's where I am, how do I navigate to my destination from here?
Right.
It activates your internal Google Maps system.
Yeah. I know for myself, a big game changer was this most recent relationship. And it was kind of in the works for a while. The lady I'm with now, fantastic lady, by the way. Mary Ventura is her name. I started dating her, and I thought to myself, I'm not going to get... before I... Let me backtrack a little bit. I came to the conclusion that dating someone was shopping for marriage. That's what it is. See if it's going to work, and if it does, great. Otherwise, why? You're getting back to that pleasure-seeking thing. What is the point if there's nothing higher other than just to hang out and enjoy yourself. Right. So that's kind of the context I put on it, and I started dating her, and I started to really dig and do more reading. I read a lot of good books, and I started to look at the relationship, my relationship with her, as a context of the future and what I wanted to be as a father and as a husband. And that's really kind of guided the things I focused on. I've started to look at, and she has too. We've started to look at what we're going to be as, what we would be as parents and as spouses. And only time can tell what the future holds. But there's a lot of promise, I think, in our relationship. And we've set some goals for ourselves, and we've set some systems in place to give time to the things that we believe actually have meaning. And I won't go into details and all the stuff, but one of the things we've really tried to focus on is setting the example to the people around us of what a good relationship should look like. And we've had our pitfalls, and it hasn't been perfect, but I think that's definitely helped us shoot higher and move in the direction we plan to go. Because I'd rather be on the track for where I want to go than kind of be on the track of just having fun, which is what a lot of relationships are about, and without the focus will be about.
Right. And Jordan Peterson, in his book 12 Rules for Life, one of his rules, I believe it is rule number 7, although do not quote me on that. The rule is do what is meaningful, not what is expedient. And he goes into great detail about how giving up something now, that sacrifice is in the hopes that you'll gain something of greater value later. And I think your description of how you and Mary are living and how you are interacting in your relationship really personifies that, in that you aren't just living to have all the expediences of a relationship now. You're making the sacrifice of giving that up in the hopes that eventually you'll be able to support a family and have a very great life together, prosperous life together. And so you're forgoing that expedience and finding great meaning in that sacrifice. And I think that's a very admirable thing that you're doing.
Thank you. I definitely think, you say sacrifice. I think there's so much pleasure that can be drawn from self-denial. It's nothing like the pleasure you get from entertainment or whatever, the cheap pleasure, if you will. And I would say it's been more enjoyable. It's not easy. I wouldn't want it to be easy. And it's probably not even as hard as it should be because I'm probably still not aiming high enough.
Right. One saying that I've come up with, and I keep telling myself whenever I feel weak and I feel like going back to my old ways, or I feel that I'm tempted to go back to my old ways, I think of how easy it was to just care about no one else but myself. Mm-hmm. And I keep telling myself this saying that I'm sure I'm not the first person who said it and the person who came up with it, but it's resonated with me. And the saying is, if it was easy, then everybody would do it. It just resonates with me that we as humans, we don't want to do necessarily what's just easy. I mean, some people choose to do what's easy, but in general, we strive to do things that are difficult and challenging. Mm-hmm. And through that, we find a great deal of our motivation, that we want to accomplish certain feats that have never been done before, or at least never been done by us, and we thought that were never possible. And yet, we continue to strive for these things, and it's not easy. But if it was easy, then everybody would do it. And if everybody does it, then, well, it doesn't make you very special. It makes you ordinary.
I think another useful tool in setting your destination is keeping death in mind. A lot of people are afraid of that. It seems like a rather grim thought, because it is, if you're not living for anything. But as a Catholic, I remember listening to one of Jordan Peterson's videos, and he was talking about, well, what's it mean, and what's it going to mean in 10 billion years? And he's going to be like, we humans can't afford to think like that because it's too grim. But as a Catholic, it's kind of like, what's it going to mean in 10 million years? Well, same thing it means today. If it's good, it's good. God is eternal. I kind of slink back on my responsibilities as a Catholic, very, very much so. And I've found that before I've started to really push myself back into it, I found myself in those empty, destitute thoughts, those lonely, just horrible feelings of despair and just meaninglessness. And that's gone away since I've tried to be a Catholic better. That really has gone away, and I don't feel that at all anymore. And I can look forward, and I can't really put it into words.
Right. I think I may have something that'll help you with that. So, one of the exercises that Stephen Covey in his book 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, he tells you to envision yourself going to a funeral.
Oh, I have that in my notes.
Yeah,
I literally have that in my notes.
Well, it's a great exercise, and as you're walking in and you walk up to the casket, you look down and you realize it's your funeral.
Yeah.
And then which is it's a terrifying thought to be attending your own funeral, because at that point it's not like you can interact with anyone. No. And it's not like anything you're going to say means anything because you're dead. But he asks you to think about, what would you like people to say about you? Right. And I think that's what it's going to mean in 10 million years, in 10 billion years, is if you have children, then the way you lived, your legacy will live on through them. Good. If you were able to spread goodness throughout the world, then that's what it's going to mean. And no, it may not come back that you get credit for everything, or that you even get any amount of credit. But the fact that you had something to do with it, and you chose to take a stand and be a person of integrity, that's what it's going to mean in 10 million years.
That's a good point. And that's another thing I've really tried. You hit a topic that's been hot on my mind for a while now. Getting credit. I've really tried to change the way I look at it, because for the longest time, since I was a little kid, and even now to a point, doing so much fishing for credibility, accreditation, and credit. It's so shallow. And, trying to change your motivation to doing the good thing because it's good and right. And, taking your sense of accomplishment from just knowing it was the right thing. And I've even tried to do exercises to do good things that I know I won't get credited for. And I think that's been a massive help. I certainly need to do that. And I need to do that even more than I am now. Because, in conversation, all types of stuff, I constantly catching myself red-handed, fishing for that credibility, just in conversations, trying to be relatable, trying to be getting people to like me, look up to me, give me credit.
I've caught myself trying to do that as well. And one thing that I've tried to implement when I catch myself doing that is change my state of mind from most of the time I have a very individual state of mind, in that I want to, when I think of improving, I automatically go to my individual improvement, and how can I affect my individual improvement, and then spread outward from that. But when I go to something like credibility, I think of the group, that it was collective, the collective environment that I was in allowed me to produce whatever it may have been that is being now renowned as this accomplishment. But it wasn't just me that did it. I was able to do that because I have so many people backing me up that it's not just me starting this podcast. You know, like, first of all, if I was to do that, I'm sure I would get an incredible amount of resentment from you because you've put in just as much, if not more, work than I have. Probably more. But as you shake your head, but it wasn't just you or just me that inspired me to create this podcast. It was so many other collective people around me, motivating me and encouraging me and giving me advice that I ask for, and not just shrugging me off as, well, everybody makes a podcast, and what makes you think that you're so special? Well, I'm not special, but I'm sorry?
Sure you are, Phil.
Thank you, Daniel. But I still want to do it because I want to find a way to spread some goodness in the world, and I want to be able to learn from that as well. And I think this is a great way to put that on the loudspeaker and just take in whatever anyone has to say about it.
I think there are a lot of aspects you can look at the podcast from. You know, I think there are a lot of ways you could take it to help you be better at a lot of things. But yeah, I'm happy to be in this journey with you, and I'm glad you asked me to do this. I'm looking forward to seeing where we can take it, and what good things we can come of it, what thoughts we can encourage in people's minds. All right,
so we got a little bit off topic there, I feel like.
Yeah, it's all good.
But as long as we can take some good out of it, I think it's for the best.
You know,
well, maybe not for the best, but
the good is often the enemy of the best.
That's true. That's very true. But sometimes in the circumstances of good and evil, I would say it'd be much better to choose good than to choose evil.
Yep.
But anyway, getting back to our process here, the next point that we have is a plan.
Right.
So I think this is important because when you develop a guide, it keeps you on track, and it makes it so much easier for you to pinpoint when you're starting to veer from that path and when you've completely gone off that path. And it also makes it a lot easier to find that path if you have gone off that path. Now, you may be at a point further back than you were when you fell off the horse, but it does make it easier to come back if you have a plan. As Dave Ramsey outlines in his Financial Peace University, I believe it is, he has baby steps. And those baby steps, it seems like he can always point someone in the dire straits when it comes to their finances. He can always point them to one of his baby steps that they just have to go to, and they have to just work at it. And I think that self-improvement is very similar in that you have to have a plan and you have to know where you're going with it.
Yeah.
Which is the destination, and this is how you're going to navigate to it.
Yeah, I think when you're developing a plan, obviously, you look at where you want to go, what you want to have, like with money, Dave Ramsey. I think money's great because there's so much that you can understand about your own behavior just from understanding how you handle money. And I think a lot of good traits in self-discipline and behavior can flow out of good money handling skills. Writing a budget, I think, is very, very important because, you can say you want to have a $1 million house paid for, but if you don't budget that money out, your budget is your month to month. It's your schedule for your money, and that's how you get where you want to go. But yeah, I think you start with the end, as we already said, and you work backwards. What do I need to do between now and then to get there? And like you said, baby steps, as small as you can. And if you're not willing to push yourself to make steps, go smaller, shoot smaller. It's small as you have to go to keep moving forward. And those small steps, if done consistently and well, as most everybody knows, will lead to bigger ones over time. And you want to start small, but you want to start now. That's the thing, is right now.
Right.
I mean, you can worry. I know with me, when I was really wanting to make myself better, and I kind of started this, I was always concerned. My plan's not big enough. It's not good enough. It doesn't include everything. Like, I want to be the best professional and son and all the roles in my life. Best choir member, best advisor, best everything. And, and then I realized, okay, that's great. We're going to keep moving towards that. But right now, little. Jordan Peterson talked about, starting with cleaning your room. Like, I heard him say that on one of his videos, and I was like, that's so true. Because I had thought of that. That feeling you get when you clean your room? You just keep your room clean? It's like a good feeling.
It is. It's a sense of accomplishment, but also you feel like you started to put everything in its place. And I think he says this in one of his lectures, that your room is a reflection of your life. I think it's very true that when you get into that state of mind of you're keeping your room clean, you're keeping it organized, that's going to reflect how your life is. You're going to start organizing your life. You're going to start seeing what is in disarray, and you're going to fix it.
I agree wholeheartedly.
And I think that one of the things that you really have to do when you're planning things out is you may have to do a considerable amount of research and learn about what it is you're trying to improve. Mm-hmm. Just for example, your physical health. You may struggle with what you eat. You may struggle with not getting enough exercise. And for me, probably 3 years ago, I would say that I really didn't have that great of a knowledge of exercise routines. But since then, I've been able to really seek out some people who do know a lot about exercising, and I've been able to implement some of their exercises into my routine, and that's helped me dramatically. And one quote that I'd like to say is from Carl Rogers, a famous psychologist and psychoanalyst. He says, "The only person who is educated is the one who has learned how to learn and to change." I think that's a big part of self-improvement is when you learn how to learn and you learn how to change, it has such a dramatic effect on how you'll start living your life. Because you start to develop the mindset of, what can I do better? And what am I doing now that is just no good for me? I kind of reiterated myself there, but I think that when you have those things in mind, you will start to seek out things that will teach you how to improve on them. At least when you develop those two states of mind. And at that point, I'd say, to sort of re-emphasize that, I'd like to bring up another quote from Winston Churchill, who said, "To change is to improve, to change often is to perfect." I know perfection is that as humans we tend to think we're not capable of, and I think there's maybe a considerable amount of truth in that. But I believe perfection and excellence, greatness, you can lump those into that same category of that's what we strive for. And so when we're changing often, we're striving to hit that goal of greatness.
Right. That is, of course, assuming that the change is not just blind change. It's
right. The change is implemented in a good way.
Those are all really good points. You look forward and you lay out your path, but you've got to recognize that maybe your path doesn't completely reflect where you want to go, because maybe you come to realize that there's something you didn't consider when laying out that path.
I like that. I like how you put that.
So you got to be willing to bend with the path, which is where change comes in.
Right. And that sort of leads us into our next point, which is unseen obstacles. And that's really kind of the bend and the weave of the path.
Right. The first point I have down here, the nature of the challenge will change.
Yes. It will, and you'll be tested.
Did you cheat? Did you look off my notes?
I don't think I did. I did think a lot about this though, and I can tell you have too.
Probably not as much as I should, but I did put some thought into it. Yeah.
Didn't plagiarize off of me.
Well, I think we draw from a lot of the same sources.
We do. But hopefully those sources are good sources. I think they're very reliable sources.
Sorry to slightly go off path, but Phil and I have known each other for a long time. We kind of actually grew up together.
We did. We first met when we were 6 or 7 years old.
Yeah, I was 7 at the youngest.
Yeah. So we have grown up together, basically.
So if we kind of sound like we think the same, maybe that's because we do. I think from 13, Phil was maybe 13, and I was 14 or 15 up to this point, which is 6 years later or whatever. Yeah. We spent a lot of time together. Right.
Well, we worked at the same camp together during the summer, and it seemed like our boss would have to separate us because we'd get to talking about something, and it'd make us less productive in our work, but it may have been more productive for our own development. Not to criticize our boss by any means.
He is a great,
phenomenal boss, humble. One of the best bosses, if not the best boss I've ever had.
Got to put that in there, and that's no exaggeration. Yes, Father Greenwell is a noble character.
He is a very, very noble man, and a very, very humble and admirable man too.
Yeah, unseat obstacles. So another thing I think is important is there will be times when stuff's just going to be still. Like you're going to be working and working, but there will be silence. And you'll have to come to terms with that silence and just accept it and become comfortable with it. You're going to feel stagnant, and just remember where you're going and why. And I think that'll get you through it. But it's kind of like this numbing silence, and obviously for me at least, I'm always asking myself, am I doing the right thing? Always concerned, which is good. It's healthy because if you're not doing the right thing, you sure as heck better ask yourself whether or not it's right.
Back to what you said for a second on feeling stagnant. I do agree. You have to persevere. You have to be patient in your endeavors, but also you have to be diligent in your endeavors. Thomas Jefferson said, "Everything yields to diligence." I think there's a lot of truth in that statement of if you work at it and you really work at it a lot and you stay with it, it will pay off.
You'll figure it out.
Maybe not in the biggest way possible or in the way that you want it to, but it will pay off.
It's kind of I feel like that it's very close with prayer. It seems like that's the thing that I can relate that concept to the most with prayer is, the fact of the matter is you don't necessarily understand what's important. You don't understand what's important when you start something. You have ideas, and some of them are true, but you don't know what's important. You don't know what you need to focus on. And, just pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing with an idea in mind of where you're going will get you. All those questions, those anxious feelings, those doubts, they'll go away. At least with prayer. I know that's the thing. You're asking for something, and it'll feel like it's just solved. And it won't feel like it. It'll be resolved. You will recognize it as resolved if you pray earnestly, continuously for something. But it might not be. I'd say more often than not, it won't turn out the way you think it will.
No, I don't think it will, but I agree it will be resolved. But I think a large part of prayer is being patient with it. You can't pray twice and then expect it to just happen.
Right. I think that goes for everything. I know, like in my job, patience is in any job really, but I've noticed a lot with my job, patience is huge. I troubleshoot a lot. Not as much as some of our other guys, but that's by no means a small part of my job. And the biggest thing is just patience. Just patience. Just learning to get past not understanding what the problem is and just look. Just keep looking. All right? You need to step back, look at it all again, re-examine stuff. Maybe you're going down a rabbit hole with something. But that's all it is. It's patience. Even the best troubleshooters out there need a ton of patience.
One thing that happened to me this past week, I was trying to diagnose a problem on a piece of equipment at my job, and it seemed like no matter what I did, I could not find that problem, and it wouldn't operate properly, and it just continued to fail. But I would work on it for a period of time each day, and then I would step away from it, and I would tell myself to be patient and to just
Not give up.
yes, not give up. And then took a little bit of humility on my part. And I don't want to toot my own horn there, but
Phil the humble, we all bow before him.
not as humble as I should be. Not by any means. But I asked one of my colleagues to have a look at it, and sure enough, in 5 minutes, he solved the problem.
Don't you love that? That's the best.
It was. It made me...
Put you in your place.
Yes. It took a long, hard look at myself, and the only question I could think to ask myself was, how much of a moron are you that some other guy can come over here in 5 minutes and solve this, and yet you've been working on it for 4 days now. Not continuously, but 4 days, an hour or two each day, trying to solve this problem. And it turned out that just being patient with it and having the humility to ask someone else to get a fresh set of eyes on it was what was needed to solve the problem and get the unit to operate properly.
I've had a few situations similar to that, but I think probably the worst one, I was at OPW. I don't know if you've heard of it. Next time you go to a gas pump, look at the handles. If you're in Ohio, you're probably going to see Catlow and OPW, and I've actually been at both those places. But they make a bunch of parts for fuel lines. Anyway, I was looking at one of their machines, and there was a problem. It went bad, and I started digging and digging. I had an oscilloscope out. I was looking at stuff. I was just completely lost and like humiliated and defeated. And I was like, this has got to be like a huge, complicated problem. Like, this is so beyond my pay grade. And I was, fighting, not breaking down. It was either, anyway, I got a coworker to come out the next day, and he's like, all right, make it do the thing. And as a troubleshooter, the first thing you do is obviously talk to the customer. But in the troubleshooting aspect, don't ever skip the step of watching it mess up. You got to watch it mess up.
You have to verify the concern of the customer.
Well, verify that it's messing up, and then even once you see it, watch it. From experiences told me, just look at it. Right. Even if it's not, if it is or isn't immediately obvious, either way, just watch it mess up. And if it's easy to watch it mess up, watch it over and over and over and over. And he watched it mess up 2 or 3 times, 5 minutes. He's like, it's not lined up. And I was like, what? He's like, yeah, the orientation isn't right. We're going to have to find the parameter. And it took him a little bit of time. I mean, totally machine he'd never worked on. I'd never worked on prior to this. Different manufacturer than we usually work on. But he found it. He did some digging. He found it. Punched some numbers in and bam. Perfect. So that was a little bit humiliating. Humbling, I guess, would be a better word. I wouldn't say humiliating because it's not like he humiliated me, but
right. He didn't do it with that purpose
not
in
at
mind.
all.
But
he's not that type of guy.
It did knock you down a little bit. Mm-hmm. Yeah. The same happened to me, and it is somewhat humbling to see someone else just pick it up just like that, and yet you've been staring at it for hours and hours, and you just can't seem to figure it out. Yeah, you're just spinning your tires, and then somebody comes along and says, well, you got it in the wrong gear.
Yeah, put it in park. Maybe then it'll start. Oh, I got a million stories like that. Literally, well, maybe not literally a million, but a lot. Right. And that actually kind of leads me to another point. is, for example, we're talking about humility and patience right now. Unseen obstacles. If you really want to get better at something, push yourself. If you want to get strong, rip the muscle, make it tear, make it hurt. It'll be hard, and you will not know how to handle it, but sometimes that's what you got to do.
Right.
With patience, with humility, with anything, work it. Make it difficult. Make it sore. Push that muscle to the point where it feels like it's ripping and it's breaking. With anything.
Yeah. One thing that Jordan Peterson says is that you have to go out and confront chaos. Mm-hmm. You have to journey into the unknown, and that's where I think he uses the Pinocchio story a lot, but it has a lot of truth in it, that when you journey into that deep, dark place, you find something of very great value that you didn't know it was even there before.
One last point on this topic. When you're improving, especially depending on where you're starting from, a big thing you've got to keep in mind is not going backwards, not doing the bad things. You obviously want to shoot high, but you also want to keep in mind that what your history has led you to do. And for me, with my past, I think one of the biggest things I had to realize was that some of the most important choices from keeping me from relapsing were the passive ones. The ones that didn't, a lot of times the biggest, hardest choices to make are the passive ones. Don't do it. The wise man goes where he will not be tempted. And, you don't want to stretch the it's going to sound counterintuitive to what we just said, but at the same time it's not. You don't want to set yourself up to fail. You do not want to risk hurting yourself again and saying, well, putting yourself in a situation where you need to have strength to not become worse. Let's say you've got a habit of, doing drugs. Let's say you're trying to quit smoking weed or quit smoking cigarettes, or quit doing something else, like
quit binge drinking on the weekend.
Binge drinking, or even talking about someone behind their back. Right. Like, you've got a bad habit, and there's this one person that always likes to talk about other people behind their back, and you break down with them and you do the same thing. Well, maybe don't talk to that person. If, why would you put yourself in a situation where you're gonna be tempted to do that, especially if your history tells you.
It'd be better to avoid the occasion of it entirely than to
tell yourself, I'll have the strength. I'll have the strength, and you put all your faith in those big monumental decisions. Those big monumental decisions aren't. They are important, but the smaller ones are a lot more important. Right. And how you handle the small ones, like not going in the first place, relatively speaking, small, I suppose, is really going to set you up for making the big, hard ones.
When you try and avoid those confrontations entirely, you can definitely put into action some of the things you've been trying to implement. But at the same time, I think that there's a certain part of you that has to confront it and has to overcome it. And I'm not saying that when you stop drinking, you should go hang out with all your friends who love to drink and go to a party and just hope that you don't drink. It's not that simple, but I do think that eventually you will encounter something or someone that has that habit or does that thing, and you'll have to choose between relapsing or staying strong. And that leads perfectly into our next topic that we're talking about, which is failure or getting past it. I think when you come to an obstacle like that, it, at least in my case, it always seems to happen at the worst time. As soon as my boss has just put a lot of stress on me at work, and when someone very close to me has, we've just had a disagreement and we're not necessarily on very good terms, and then all of a sudden 2 or 3 people start to criticize me for something that I've done in the past, and on top of all this, some person from my past now just comes into my life and wants me to help them get to a party.
Or wants money. I get wants money a lot.
I've gotten that.
Those are the people
too.
you don't want in your life when they only show up when they need money.
Yes. Or when they only show up because they want something from you, and they're not adding any value. They're just here to take it all.
Yeah, and I think that's pretty self-evident.
It is. It's very self-evident. But it always seems to happen when everything else is just crumbling away. It's like Murphy's Law. Those are the real times that I say it defines your character. Of if you can get past it when everything's going wrong, man, when everything's going right, you're going to be on cloud 9, and you're just going to be feeling great, like I don't want to say not a care in the world, but you're going to be in such a good state of mind if you can persevere through something and you can get past it. When everything goes wrong, then when everything's going right, or even a few things are going right, you're going to be doing just fine.
Sometimes it's going to be hard. Sometimes you're going to feel like crap. And, you're just going to have to move past it.
Right. Sometimes your life's going to be unstable. Sometimes your relationship's going to seem unstable.
Just remember why it's there.
Keep that realization with you. That big reason to motivate you. Because that's what'll keep you going through it.
When you do fail, it just makes the good times so much better,
Right. And when you do fail, that's when you sort of have to have that plan in place to come back to, because you might be a little bit further back on those baby steps, as Dave Ramsey calls them, but you're still on the baby steps. You're still in the process, and that's when you double down and you just keep hitting it as hard as you can. You just take everything that you can, and it's that 110% that it's not possible mathematically, but somehow you just get through it. You don't know how. It seems like it was divine intervention, and maybe it is. I think that a lot of the time it is some higher power that comes over and just guides everything into its right and proper place. And when you can do that, when you can get past it, or even when you fail and you have to go back at it again, it builds your strength. And this is This is really one of our ending points here in our process. Is this is what you're going to build in your character is going to be your strength, from your journey, in that when you fail and you have to double back down on it, or when you get past those moments where everything's going wrong, you're going to build that sense of determination, that sense of, I don't care what goes wrong, it can't stop me from getting to my goal. I might have to find another way, but I'm going to do it. And that strength that you build through your process, that's what will stick with you. And that's what will really mold you into the strong person that you want to be, or the whatever you're trying to improve. That's what's going to be the frame for it.
Right, and in the end game, if you work hard with direction, I would say work hard with direction. Like, that's basically it as far as action steps go. Work hard with direction. You're going to have the life you want.
Yeah.
That's what you're going to see. And before you know it, you're going to realize, hey, I love my life. This is a great life. This is because, you know what? You're putting effort into developing the life you want and what you want for yourself.
Right. And at that point, you take a certain amount of pride in it, and you get to see those results really make themselves heard at that point. And
you're going to have ownership over your own life. You're going to be like, this is my life now. This is something I care about.
Right.
I'm going
not
somewhere
only
with
that
it.
you care about, that you've created. That sense of accomplishment that you're going to feel is one of the best feelings that I've ever been able to really feel. It's such a great feeling when someone compliments me on my values, or on how they think I'm mature for my age, which I don't think I'm very mature for my age. I think I'm pretty immature. But when someone compliments me like that, at that point, I can't help but smile. It doesn't matter if I'm in a terrible mood. If someone says something like that to me, it just resonates on such a deep level with me that it's part of that result, that it's like, well, it's not only me who's seeing it. It's not only me who's really feeling the difference. Everyone else is seeing it too, and they've taken notice. So I'm not. It takes away the feeling of being stagnant, and replaces it with a feeling of pride and accomplishment. And I'm not saying that when you get that feeling, just stop by any means. Don't stop. Keep going along with your process. And I believe Jordan Peterson says the phrase, ask yourself, what can you do that you would do that would improve yourself? And I think once you hit your destination, that's what you should ask yourself, is what can I do now that I've completed that? What do I do to improve upon that, or to use that to implement something else? So not necessarily an end game, just the end of one book that continues into another book. We could definitely continue for hours on this subject, but I think we've really hit it home on this process and why it's so significant. So thank you for listening, and thank you for being with us tonight as we conversed over the topic of self-improvement, as we reminisced about what it means to improve oneself, about the process of improving, about ways for analyzing the progress towards your destination, and about finally the products of your efforts and your sacrifices and what all of it will amount to.
Please feel free to share your thoughts and comments on the things we talked about tonight, as well as any ideas for future topics. Thank you for joining us on At the Root of Knowledge with Phil Rybarczyk and Daniel Schoech.